In New World, you'll colonize a fictional land modeled after the Americas in the 1600s. On the website, they say New World is a thrilling open-world MMO filled with danger and opportunity where you'll forge a new destiny for yourself as an adventurer shipwrecked on the supernatural island of Aeternum. Endless opportunities to fight, forage, and forge await you among the island's wilderness and ruins. Channel supernatural forces or wield deadly weapons in a classless, real-time combat system and fight alone, with a small team, or in massed armies for PvE and PvP battles. The choices are all yours. You land on Aeternum after surviving a shipwreck. From here, you'll make your way through a short tutorial area that involves shipwrecks, killing reanimated, drowned crew members, and the like that will introduce you to the combat system, the cooking and crafting systems, and the skill trees. When you first arrive in Aeternum, your character will have 5 points in each of the core attributes. Each time your character levels up, you're granted attribute points to spend on whichever attribute or attributes you choose. To survive and thrive in New World, you'll need to overcome a lot of challenges, learning new skills and abilities as you adventure, and you do that across 3 main categories: core attributes, trade skills, and weapon mastery. You can master as many or as few weapon and trade skills as you want, but your core attributes determine how strong you are versus other players, NPCs, and animals and monsters, etc. out in the world. What's also cool though is that New World enables you to respec your allocated skills until you're about level 25, so you can play around with a lot of different builds. The various skills improve your core attributes such as maximum health, ranged and melee weapon proficiency, and magic proficiency. In addition, you also get weapon mastery points to allocate to different weapons, and these will unlock passive and active abilities via 2 separate skill trees. New World's combat is action-based with offensive and defensive abilities as well as a block action, and there are also magical weapons for the magey types among you. It's a use-to-level weapon system, so you can always level up another weapon tree if you decide you want more options or you just want to try something different. Once you get yourself off of the tutorial beach and closer to the first settlement, you'll see how amazing this world looks. There are gorgeous, lush valleys, stony mountains with atmospheric, cloudy skies. You can spend a lot of time in this game just exploring. The world is huge. It's filled with nooks and crannies where you can find useful items, treasure, and the occasional unexpected boss. You'll have a lot of quests to do. They're not very deep story-wise, but they do take you to interesting locations around the map. Also, the world's a bit unpredictable. In the early areas, you can stumble on things that are more dangerous than you would expect in an area that has a lot of low-level players. So as you explore, you'll also run into enemies that are far higher level than you, depending on how much the corruption has advanced in the region. Every player can collect materials and craft things to contribute to a settlement, which makes that settlement level up and offer more services and amenities. But if I'm understanding it right, it sounds like the corruption will generally progress through a zone, resulting in invasions where, if the forces of corruptions are successful, that'll actually knock a settlement back down and it'll have to be built back up again. This sounds like an interesting situation that could lead to an ongoing fight for dominance of the region between you, your faction, other factions, and the corruption itself. It also sounds like a decent mix of PvE and PvP, even for people like me who love the idea of PvP, but usually avoid it because we suck at it. Territory control and faction-based PvP that you opt in or out of could mean a lot of social interaction, so possibly your chat feed will also be inundated with the kind of comments that only a 13-year-old boy would love. However, it also adds a shared social experience into the mix. By funneling players into 3 different factions, everyone has some level of investment in the group effort. You can choose to go solo, but it seems like there'd be real fun to be had by grouping up and eventually taking over a territory with your chosen faction. The only downside would be on servers where one faction becomes completely dominant. That would probably really reduce the fun. Speaking of territories, Territory ownership is a big part of the game experience. With the inclusion of territory control incentives, the goal, according to the devs, is to entice more players to take part in claiming and protecting territory by making the rewards of settlement ownership appealing. Benefits to being part of the faction that owns a specific territory include linked storage in between settlements that are owned by the same faction, a resource cart in town that will provide crafting materials to faction members, fast travel benefits, gathering volume, and luck bonuses, to name a few. The intent seems to be a game whose flow is dictated by players instead of a theme park experience, and I think that has a lot of potential, though whether it's fun in practice may or may not depend on the luck of being on a good server world. New World was originally supposed to have a big emphasis on PvP, with each of the game's regions on the map able to be won over by one of the human factions to gain the bonuses I just talked about. Early on, though, New World was all PvP all the time, which the dev team apparently thought led to a toxic environment. So this incarnation of PvP as it currently exists is PvP opt-in only, so it'll be interesting to see how this develops as the community expands after the game actually releases in August. The shift away from straight PvP has meant that New World's PvE content has to stand on its own 2 feet, and that's yet to be seen. From a strictly story standpoint, I do have a few beefs with the game. New World uses 17th century explorers and the discovery of new lands as its setting. You land on Aeternum, also known as the Eternal Isles. The land of Aeternum is overflowing with a natural element called Azoth, which is a substance that's rumored to be capable of bestowing eternal life. Once you arrive, you quickly find out that this is not a utopian paradise. A powerful force known as the Corruption has overtaken everything, and it infects anything that it comes into contact with. So you've got to fight back the corruption, take control of the land, and compete with other players to claim and secure your legacy in the New World. I really like the premise, but in practice, I've had some trouble telling the difference between main story quests and side quests. There doesn't seem to be much of a narrative thread to follow, at least not that I've seen yet. It's almost as though they crafted a strong premise and strong setting, and then mistook those 2 things for an actual story. In the same vein, the PvE element feels much less developed than the PvP ones, which is understandable since they did decide to beef up the PvP after the game had been in development for a while. But if the PvE and story feels tacked on, it's going to be a problem for the player base they seem to be trying to attract. I'm going to reserve judgment on this though, because I'm still fairly early in the game and I do want to see how it plays out. So, what are my cons for this game? There's not very many. I'm actually really enjoying the game, but one would be the character creation. It's sufficient, but that's about as far as I'd go. I think they could have added a lot more personalization to the character creation. Another one is, I don't understand why the male and female characters have to wear the exact same male clothing. I mean, I know it's a frontier setting, and I would hate to see sparkly armor bikinis, for example, but from any distance, you cannot tell male and females apart at all. They wear the exact same clothing. I think an option for immersion-appropriate female tailored clothes, and maybe even a dress or 2 for when you're in town, would be a nice thing. And lastly, I am really enjoying it so far, but the crafting and gathering does look to me like it has the potential to get kind of grindy, so I'm hoping that's not the case. On the pro side, the world is gorgeous. It's lush and pretty. The towns and settlements are realistic and interesting. I like that you can buy and furnish a home and really invest into your faction and settlement. I like the combat. It's fairly simple. You have to know how to actually aim since you won't be tab targeting anything. And I like the classless approach that lets you choose and level up whatever weapon combination you want. For me, at least, this game runs very smoothly. I've heard some people have had trouble with it, but I've had 0 lag issues. I've got my graphics settings on high and everything looks and runs great. I also like the low fantasy setting and the armors. It's a very nice change from the enormous sparkly swords and armor bikinis of most MMOs. Lastly, there's no sub fee for New World. The game is $40. I'm sure there'll be optional cosmetic purchases available as time goes on, but as long as they don't veer into pay-to-win territory, I think that's fine. So there you have it. Let me know if you plan to take a look at New World, or if you've been playing the beta, tell me what you think. See you soon.